Hey, what's up, everybody? It is Uncle Mad here, live on a Friday night to talk a little Nashville SC. Feels pretty good to be back in the swing of doing this on a regular basis. We're still in that early, I don't know if you'd call it honeymoon phase of the season where I'm still enthusiastic, still excited about the team. They haven't quite broke me yet, so I'm still willing to talk about them probably more than I should otherwise. Tomorrow, Nashville SC has their second match of the 2025 MLS season. They will make their way up to New Jersey to take on New York Red Bulls, which I don't really like. I think they used to be Red Bull New York. I like that better. That just seems fancier. I don't know. I like it better with their New York Metro Stars, to be honest. But it's neither here nor there. That's the match tomorrow. Lots to talk about there. We'll talk a little bit just about last week's match first before we get to New York tomorrow. Last Saturday, we opened the season at home at Geodis Park against New England Revolution. A stunning, shocking 0-0 draw. Stop me if you've heard this one before from Nashville. Let's see. I know it was kind of seems like a mixed bag. I know there's definitely some people that were very, very negative on the result last week. I would have liked to have seen a score, obviously, but I'm also kind of being realistic. We had two wildly inexperienced players, kind of in the hub of our midfield. Um, it's still going to be a growing process getting BJ's system in and getting everything underway, but I thought it looked good. I thought we pressed well. I thought you could see there was clear patterns of play to the way that we wanted to play the game. We narrowed the field incredibly. Like, actually, there was some stuff that came out from I think it was Ben Wright with 615 Soccer who posted some stuff about how we actually literally narrowed the field. Like, they shrunk Geo's Park. Like, they took a few yards off of it to make it a little tighter playing surface. And BJ kind of said, like, he explained the thought process is kind of play tight, suck the other team in to create space elsewhere to where you can make maybe quickly spring attacks into areas where you're creating that space. So interesting formation, interesting levels. There's some really good stuff online from 615 Soccer breaking down the specifics of the tactics. But I think it's good that we have a specific, you can see the patterns of play, you can see the tactics, whether they're going to work, whether they're going to like really produce dividends, that's still yet to be seen. I thought we looked pretty decent going forward, but I mean, it's a work in progress, like I said. But I mean, I was pleasantly encouraged. I would have liked to have got the goal. Obviously, there's a lot of talk about the offsides call that took Sam Surridge's goal off the board, and most of the replays that come out have looked pretty tight. But I mean, once they called it on the field, based on the replays I've seen, I don't think there was any way they could have overturned that. So it stuck. We didn't get the goal. Saw it out. Kind of started to lose a little bit of momentum down the stretch. New England came alive a little bit the last 5-10 minutes. They had a goal. Way offsides called back. So 0-0 draw, which, is probably the bread and butter standard of what you'd expect from Nashville SC. But it was a weirdly more encouraging, more positive 0-0 than what we've seen throughout most of the Gary Smith years of Nashville SC, which I'll say it to the death. I'm always going to be a Gary Smith defender. But it was fun to see a little bit more aggression and attack, a little bit more thought put into the way we attacked last Saturday. So that was a good thing, an encouraging sign. Sam Wolf in the chat says, "Hi, Sam, what's up? Glad to have you with us tonight." But like I said, pretty encouraged off the game. Would have liked to get the result, especially because you're kind of looking at a team like New England, finished behind us in the standings last year, a team that likely will be kind of in the same range as us, playing for the same type of positioning as us. So, it's one of those you'd say is a kind of a 6-point match where, if you win, you not only get 3 points, but you take 3 points away from one of your direct rivals. But it's a long season. It's one game in. A lot can happen over the course of the season. And like I said, I mostly positive on last week's game just because there's some encouraging things. I will say very positively, like if you watched my season preview, my biggest concern for the season was the defense. And, maybe it wasn't the best test New England. I don't know if that New England really had any kind of really dangerous 1v1 pacey players that could really threaten our defense the way I'm worried about. But Walker Zimmerman looked like vintage, like 2020, 2021 Walker Zimmerman. He looked like he found the fountain of youth, maybe having the full summer off, not any kind of really action with the international teams short of the short January camp they always do with MLS players, maybe on a full off season. He came in healthy, came in fit, came in, does have to be said he's playing for a contract. He's in a contract year, so could be a little extra there. But I thought Walker was awesome in the game. I thought Andy Nahar was great on the right back position. didn't see any drop off going from Shaq Moore to him. Dan Lovitz didn't really have to do too much. Jack Marr really didn't have to do too much, but didn't really make any mistakes, didn't really hurt the team. So that's another thing that was encouraging. Something I was very worried about. The defense looked pretty solid, looked pretty good, particularly Walker. I mean, I was really, really impressed with Walker and with Andy Nahar. So, I mean, yeah, that's really positive things I think we can build on. If that continues, if the defense continues to be able to kind of hold the line, so to speak, and, play up to the standards we'd like to see from them, and the offense takes that next step, starts to click, the goals start coming, I think some good things are going to happen. But moving ahead to our opponent this week, New York Red Bulls, I don't like this matchup at all. I never like this matchup. I don't think we've ever beat New York Red Bulls. I think we're like 0-6. Maybe not 0-6. Maybe there's been some draws in there, but I don't think we've ever beat New York Red Bulls. And even if we have, it still feels like we never have. So I'm going to just chalk it up and say we never have. I actually just read something that we haven't even scored on them since 2021. They've always been a nightmare matchup problem for us, and it's kind of no surprise that under the Gary Smith years, he was frequently bringing in players from there. Dax McCarty, Sean Davis, Alex Muil. Like, if you can't beat them, join them type of mentality. Just keep bringing in Red Bull players to try to Drew Yearwood. Just keep picking at that vine to try to bring in some players that can maybe, give whatever the magic they have against us to us. But they lost to FC Cincinnati last week, which don't know how much you can really hold that against them. FC Cincinnati, as disgusting as it is to say, probably is going to end up being one of the better teams in the league again this year. So, losing that game in your opener for Red Bulls, I'm going to say Red Bull New York, I don't care. Probably not, one that you got to sit there and go, that's a bad loss or anything like that. That's, one you can kind of stomach, one you can kind of take if you're in New York. Coyote jumping in. He says 2 lost, 4 drawn against Red Bull New York. There you go. Officially, no wins, but 4 draws. I mean, that's better than I would have thought. I feel like we've almost lost every time. Maybe it's just like drawing them almost feels like a loss. I don't know, but going to be interesting. I don't like the matchup, the way they press, their aggression. I think that's a bad matchup for a team that's still kind of trying to find its feet, trying to find its legs, trying to find the chemistry between the players. On the injury front, Patrick Yazbak removed from the injury report. He's fully cleared to play. Don't know if that necessarily means that he goes right back into the starting lineup. I would think if he's good enough to go, BJ probably would go with him because, for as good and as impressive as Matthew Cochran and Will Meyer, our 2 young midfielders who kind of got the surprise start last week, looked, them with the extra pressure that's going to come from Red Bull New York's press, I don't know that they can have the success they had against New England, and there's a little bit more pressure being put on them when they're on the ball. They were really good. They didn't do anything wrong, no major mistakes, few little slip-ups here and there, but nothing really hurt the team. They always recovered well. They always made up for their mistakes when they made them. Pretty solid possession. They kind of both gave me this, Manchester United fan here, Michael Carrick vibes from back in the day. Michael Carrick wasn't like the old school, traditional destroyer in central midfield who's just constantly winning the ball back, constantly winning headers, constantly winning tackles. His positioning was really good. He was always, picking the ball off, always getting interceptions, always finding space. But he was kind of like an early adapter of kind of the more, that midfielder being more involved in the attack than sixes or CDMs used to be. He was always there as an outlet. He was always the one who could recycle the ball, could reset the play, could reset the attack. And that's kind of what Matt Cochran and Meyer really did for us last week. They weren't really, hitting any Hollywood balls, weren't really hitting any line-breaking passes, but they were always there. They were always an outlet. They were always able to help us keep possession, keep the ball moving, and kind of reset the point of attack if there was not an opening where we were looking at there. So with Brian Acosta still out, with Brugman, he was moved up to questionable, but, I would think that means he probably doesn't play. We've seen last week the 2 questionable players were Yazbak and Schaffelberg. Neither one of them played, so at least for this early part of the season where, maybe we're not rushing players in, it seems like if their list is questionable, that leans me more towards not playing. But you never know, BJ might have a surprise up his sleeve, and we might have our, first choice midfield of Brugman and Yazbak out there tomorrow. I don't know. I would like to see that just because, like I said, the 2 young guys against a hard-pressing New York Red Bull team, I don't think favors us very much at all. I never think Red Bull New York matchups favor us at all. I don't have a whole lot more to say on this one. It's so early in the season. There's not much new to really break down or add that I didn't say kind of in the season preview. Obviously, they have 2 very experienced, really good attacking players with a pretty high pedigree from their time in Europe. Emil Forsberg, which he's one of those ones where I'm like, it's that was such a weird story last year. Where it was almost like he came to Red Bull New York to like escape his wife or something like that. It was a weird story. I don't even remember all the details, but that was a kind of a crazy one there. But he's borderline still in his prime, borderline a really still a really good player. I believe he's still getting called in for the Swedish national team. So that's a dangerous player. And then the one they brought in, Chopa Moting, I may have mispronounced that, but guy with tons of experience, a good striker, knows how to score goals, played for Bayern, played for Stoke City, probably a few other clubs over in Europe. So, two veteran, solid players with a good pedigree, good background, dangerous in attack. Probably, certainly more dangerous than, what we saw last week from New England. I mean, Carlos Gill still doesn't look like what he was back in the day. Looks like he might not ever, one game, who knows? But, I would be more worried about Emil Forsberg and Chopa Moting than I probably was against Carlos Gill and Campagna. Although I did say Campagna is kind of a Nashville SC killer. I don't know if that was true or not. Sometimes I just make things up. Sometimes I just say things, and I don't know if they're actually accurate or true. But if it's in my head, if it's in my heart, if it's in my gut, I'm going to say it like it's a fact. That's just what I'm going to do on here. So more dangerous attack, a more dangerous kind of pressing game that I think is not going to play well for our team that's still trying to find its way into being a more possession-oriented team. Having that extra bit of pressure on the ball when we have the ball is probably not going to work out too well for us. But, like I said, I really like the way our defense played last week. So I think they'll be able to bail us out, be able to help us out some, keep us from, completely losing control of the match. I think they can help us keep it competitive. And, you never know, quick transition, quick counter, vintage Nashville SC style goal, steal a goal, sit back a little bit more. You never know what could happen. My gut tells me if I was going to make a betting score, I would say probably 2-0 New York Red Bulls. That just feels like we're going to need a little bit more work to kind of get that over that hump and actually get the goals to start going in. And like I said, I've said it like 15 times now. New York Red Bulls, I just don't think is a good matchup for us in this spot while we're still trying to get through it, get it figured out. Like I said, starting lineup wise, I think everything will pretty much be the same, except Yazbek would come in, I would think, if he's cleared and fully ready to go, just to get a little bit more experience in that midfield. But it'd be interesting to see if he comes back in, who drops out. Would it be Meyer or Cochran? Because I don't know that you would say one was better than the other or any, difference here or there. I thought they both played pretty solid, both pretty comparable in the way they played. So, do you go with Meyer just because he's a little bit older, maybe a little bit more experience, having played college? Although I just heard this the other day, it's crazy, his story. He only played like 8 games his senior year at UCLA from injuries and stuff like that. So a little bit of a wild story there. Cochran, more experience at the pro level, having been, playing in the USL for the last 2 years. So if Yazbek's back in and Brugman is still out, which one of those stays in, which one goes out, that'll be an interesting decision in the lineup. Ahmad Qassam, big surprise last week that he was in the match day squad up until day of. We weren't even sure if he'd even got his visa yet, because last we heard from BJ in the pregame press conference, that was a process that was still ongoing. Must have got it cleared up and everything's set and ready to go in time for the match. He was on the bench, came on for the last 15 minutes or so. Super bright looking, super dynamic looking, super different than anything Nashville SC has probably ever had in that type of position. So don't think he probably jumps right into the starting lineup quite yet. He's had a week of training under his belt now, so he's probably getting a little bit more integrated with the team. So maybe he gets brought on a little bit earlier this match than last time, but I'm hoping to see more of him. I think he, it's early days. It's too early to really get over it hyped or over excited, but I do think he showed some stuff that it's not going to be, I don't think we have to worry about him, or there's not going to be as slow as an integration process as maybe I thought there might be for him. I think he kind of looks pretty close to ready to go, at least. So, want to see more of that. A couple things here in the chat. Wormy jumped in, said, hey, Wormy is in. I've mentioned it before. He started his own YouTube channel now. Check that out if you haven't already. He's got some great stuff already from Nashville SC. He had a match day vlog from last week's home opener. Richard, our friend from the Great White North, is in the chat. What's up, Richard? Good to see you there. Wormy comes in here and he said, I'd take the USL experience over college. I probably would too. And I think just Cochran, from everything I've read about him, everything that's been described about him, is that he has, right up there with like Chris Applewhite, our center back who's come out of the academy. Like they're probably, in terms of the young players that we've brought to the club, 2 that have the highest ceiling, especially like from the American domestic level. Like there's both of them are kind of looked at as potential future USMNT players. They're both playing for the US youth teams at different levels. So yeah, like you said, I would totally agree with you there. The 2 years of pro experience, even if USL is not fully at the highest level, it's probably a higher level than what you're seeing in college soccer these days. Especially like I feel bad for college soccer because it feels like it's slowly deteriorating just because so many more players are able to go with the academy systems that are developing with the expansion of USL, growth of MLS Next Pro. There's so many more opportunities for young players to kind of play at a different level that gives them maybe a better chance to get to the pro level than going the college route and kind of spending 4 years, because it's kind of crazy. Like it's weird where like all these other sports seem to be like pushing further away from letting young players get into the pros. And soccer's getting to the point where like if you're not a pro by like 19, you're a bust. Like it's crazy. Like some of these like things, especially like you look over, it hasn't quite hit MLS yet, but if you follow European soccer, like especially if you like really hardcore follow a team and the players that are in your team's academy, and people are like, he's 21, he doesn't have it, and you're like, what? We're saying he doesn't have it at 21? Yikes! But yeah, he's an exciting player. Applewhite, I wonder when we're going to see him. Like it was interesting. Nashville SC this week, and all that. I think all the teams in MLS, they published the official roster breakdown, the official designations that the teams were using for all their players. And I believe our other two academy players, Sipic and Isaiah Jones, are listed on like especially home groups. I can't remember what the exact title of it, but it's basically it's a spot on the roster where if they're not officially on the full or supplemental roster, but if they play more than 6 MLS matches, they have to be added. So they can only play 6 before they have to be added. And Chris Applewhite, the center back, who's got a lot of hype coming into this season, is on the supplemental roster, which means he's fully eligible to play as many matches as he wants, I believe. I still don't understand what the difference between the supplemental and like regular roster is, because it seems like there's not that much. I don't know. It's weird. MLS should just scrap all this roster crap and just they took a step in the right direction, adding the cash-based trades/transfers this past offseason, but they really should scrap a lot of this other stuff and just try to make it like simplified. Keep the salary cap. I think the salary cap's a good thing for parity and stuff like that, but just maybe let teams spend what they want. Maybe like the designated player rule where you can bust the player over the cap for a few players is fine. I don't know. It's so confusing, so hard to keep up with as a fan, but excited to see that he was listed as a player that there sounds like expecting to play more than 6 matches from that description there. So that was a little bit of a tangent there. Let's see. What do you think of the USL starting their own D1 league? I'll be interested to see how it plays out. I don't know. I think, unfortunately, I hate to say this, but this is the way sports go now. I think a lot of it will come down to like the money, like who's bringing in the money to that, because there's going to have to be money to keep that afloat. How many times, have we seen USL teams fold year after year? I mean, we just had, I think, the Memphis team here in Tennessee folded. I mean, it's pretty common occurrence for USL teams to drop out, drop in. I don't really know, unless they find like a big TV deal that can like guarantee income and guarantee money that would bring in more money from ownership groups, that they can really do anything that significant. It'll be interesting if they really get to the point. I think they're saying like, what is it, 2027, 2028, they are aiming to have like a pro rel system set up in the USL new league. So I don't know if they get to that point. That's what I'm saying. It'll be interesting to watch. It'll be interesting to see how it develops. But I'm a little skeptical just because I think it takes a lot of money, a lot of investment to make something like that actually work. And I don't know, without a TV deal, without some kind of massive investment from some kind of outside source, I don't know where the money comes to really make that a legitimate thing. But I mean, the more opportunities there are for people to play the game, the more opportunities, like, Matt Cochran coming through the USL, maybe I don't really know. I know he was in, I believe it was FC Dallas's academy, and I don't know what happened where, if they just didn't feel he was ready to play at 16 and he was ready to play as a pro and went to the USL just to get into some type of pro league. I don't really know what the transition there was, but I mean, I'll be interested to watch it. I don't really know what's going to come from it, but we'll see. Wormy says, what is the age cap for academy? I don't know what our top level is. I know like when they first started, they started with U13 and like U12 12 and have slowly built up and added the higher age groups. Like I think we're up to U18. I don't know if there is a U19 level in the academies for MLS. I would assume once you get past that age, your option is either you get into the first team or you get released, or maybe you go to the MLS Next Pro team for your club, which for us is obviously, Huntsville City. So maybe, I would guess 19-ish, somewhere in there. I don't know if we have a U19 level at the MLS Academy or not, or if it cuts off at 18 and we hit 19, you got to find somewhere to go. But I guess it would be somewhere around there, would be my guess, just off the top of my head. Knoxville just announced an MLS Next roster. I'm pumped. Yeah, it's pretty cool. I saw that. That's going to be a good one. It'll be interesting to see what happens. Going back to the comment about USL starting their own D1 league, how does that affect MLS Next Pro? Because MLS Next Pro, they're, by and large, it's mostly MLS reserve teams. But then there are, kind of independent teams like Knoxville, like some of the others. And what are the players' choices there? Like from the past, USL has been a more competitive level than the MLS Next Pro League. So, what's the pipeline look there? Do people go to USL to try to find their way into MLS? Do they stick with MLS Next Pro because being in something with the name MLS on it makes them think they have a better chance of getting to that? It'll be interesting to see. There's a lot of things to watch. The soccer landscape over the U.S. over the next couple of years with the World Cup and everything else, the potential changing of the MLS calendar. There's a lot of interesting things coming up with soccer in the U.S. over the next 2 to 3 years. Castle Coyote says, hot take, pro rel wouldn't work in the U.S. I'm completely in agreement with you. I've had this argument millions of times with people who are like, we should do it. It makes the league so much better. And once again, like I was kind of talking about, it comes down to the money, because MLS is never going to do it, because John Ingram didn't spend all the money he spent to create Nashville SC to risk them falling out of MLS and going down to a lower tier. And I guarantee if you ask that they're trying to do the Super League over in Europe, because every owner over there in Europe is like, I don't want to take this risk. I don't want to lose out on money. I don't want to be falling out of competitions. I want to always be in the competitions that generate the most revenue with the most money. I don't want to risk losing all that money. And USL, talking about teams folding, I don't know what's to stop if a team gets relegated from USL 1 to USL 2, the owner to say, I don't care, and just scrapping the team. Like, I think that's a big concern. It's just if they try to do relegation, owners are already dropping teams because they're just not seeing the revenue coming in from it. And without pro rel, if they have a relegation, what's to stop the owners of those teams to go, I don't really want to play in the second tier this season. We're just going to fold the team this year and whatever. It's going to be, like I said, it's all going to be interesting, but I completely agree with you, Castle Coyote. I don't think it works in the U.S. just because we are far too already adapted into the more American franchise style of sports. We don't, you can say Nashville Soccer Club, you can call it a club, it's a franchise, it's a business, it's an enterprise. Sucks. It's the one kind of crappy thing about sports that I hate talking about sometimes when we get these discussions going, but it's the truth. I mean, it's the truth. Money is the driver for a lot of this. There's some, really good owners in sports that really are competitive, really want to win championships, but money is king, and that's what drives so many of these type of decisions, and that's why I don't think we're going to see anything like that in the future. Wormy says you need to update Project Gemini. Yeah, for anybody that hasn't been around for quite a while on the channel, Project Gemini was like a jokey play on thing where Disney, whenever they do like construction projects or big updates or renovations, they give it like weird code name project things. And I did Project Gemini, where I redid my little man cave office room here at the house years ago, and since have redone it again. Didn't really redo it as much as I just reorganized it. Like this desk used to be like over against that wall, and now I've kind of got it situated in a different way, which I think looks better on camera for these type of videos and stuff like that. So I've made some changes to the room. Obviously, a lot of these posters are new since the last time I did an update. Maybe do a room tour sometime. It's off camera right now. I can't film any of the room off camera. It is a disaster. Spoiler alert, behind the scenes magic. Jesta, my beautiful wife, is out of town. She's in North Carolina right now. I think maybe Virginia. Who knows? So This room's already a mess when she's not around, and just without her to get on my case and make me clean it up, it's just sending it into madness even more. We also have a USL team, so I wonder how that works. I mean, I guess there are different ownership groups and, different roster bases. He's talking about Knoxville, I'm assuming, from because I believe, Wormy, you live in Knoxville. So um, I don't know. I think the MLS puts a little bit more money into their teams. USL, I don't know. I don't really know how that works either, but it'll be interesting to see the whole scheme, the whole landscape of U.S. soccer. MLS needs to develop its younger talent to develop and sell. I'm tired of this being considered a retirement league. That's a good point. And I think that's kind of the model Nashville SC is looking at right now. I think the players we signed this offseason, there was a handful of older players that we signed with the idea of, I think they would be kind of stopgap players who would be able to keep us competitive, keep us in the mix while we kind of develop the younger players we brought in. I fully believe Mike Jacobs even said as much, that that's part of what they need to do is develop young talent and then sell them abroad and then reinvest that money back into the team. And you look at Eddie Tagseth, 24 years old, played in the Liverpool Academy, played high level in Norway's league at the top team there, for whatever that's worth. Patrick Yazbak, an Australian, national team member, played also in the Norwegian league, 21, 22 years old, whatever he is, high ceiling there. Definitely could see him getting a big move back to Europe. Schaffelberg, your compatriot, Richard, he's had a lot of talk about his move to Europe at some point in time. Kind of trailed off a little bit since, he seemed to have a lot better run with the Canadian national team last year than he did with Nashville SC, but we'll see what happens once he comes back from this injury and can maybe hopefully get his season going. But Ahmad Kassam, I guarantee you, he's come here as a 20-year-old to, play on a more higher stage, with the Apple TV deal, with, Messi being here. There's definitely more eyeballs on MLS than I would think are on, the Norwegian league. No offense if there's randomly anybody who's a big fan of the Norwegian soccer league, or I think he came from the Sweden maybe, but I can't imagine those leagues. I mean, they probably have diehard, lifelong fans because those leagues have been around for so long, I'm sure. But I mean, in terms of like showcasing yourself, putting a spotlight on yourself, I feel like you have a better chance to do that in MLS than you do at leagues like that. Apologies if I'm wrong about that. That's just what I'm thinking. But yeah, you can definitely see with the roster makeup Nashville SC did this year. To your point, Richard, I do think there is a, eye from at least Nashville SC on investing in young talent, trying to win some stuff with them, moving them on, reinvesting with the money you get from that. It's kind of like the Atlanta United model is kind of like, I think they were the first one to kind of really do it and do it well, where they found all those young players out of South America and kind of supplemented the roster with some veterans like Guzan and Parkhurst and Joseph Martinez, who at least had a little bit of experience at that point in time. So we'll see how it goes. Combination of, even though Nashville's a big tourist spot now, I don't see it ever being a spot that like a major like European star wants to come play in. Could be completely wrong. I would have guessed that, Wilfred Zaha, who I would not call a major European star, but still, I would never have guessed that he would go to a place like Charlotte. But, I don't think that's ever going to be part of the plan for Nashville SC, but who knows? You never know what you could see. I think if we ever got like, the retirement league style player, it would be more of like a U.S. men's national team player coming to MLS, not necessarily this guy, but, like I would think Pulisic probably plays in MLS at some point towards the end of his career. Like Dempsey when he came back and played for Seattle, that type of thing. That I can see Nashville doing something like that. An older European player. I don't know if that's a thing they'll do. USL kind of stopped talking about pro reg. Apparently, some of the Mali teams don't want to be promoted. It would blow their budgets. Yeah, I think that's why they've kind of pushed it down the line. I think they've when they've talked about it, they've said they're aiming for either 2027 or 2028. But like I said earlier, and like I would agree with you, he'd correct himself here, smaller clubs. Yeah, because that's what I was saying earlier. Like, there's teams who barely have the money to be in USL as it exists now. If they get relegated out of the current version of USL into the future second tier of USL, like they're just not going to stick around. They're not just going to go down. The owners just like wash their hands of it and fold up shop and leave. So I have a really hard time seeing it happen. The only way I could ever see it happening with like MLS now at 30 teams, and I would imagine there's probably, still eyeballs on some more expansion for MLS. If they got just so big that they could do like an MLS 1, MLS 2, but the only way it would ever get approved is if both leagues got the same TV deal. Like it didn't matter if you were in MLS 1 or MLS 2, you got the same revenue share. You got the same amount of money. If the money didn't change and all that was changed is like the MLS 1 champion was the real champion and the MLS 2 champion just got promoted to MLS 1, that's the only way I could ever see MLS owners doing pro rel if the money didn't change. If there was just, if you know, because if it was like Europe where you drop out of the Premier League, you get nothing, you're dead. I don't think that would ever happen here. But if there was like, oh, we're just all gonna have the same money, it's TV share, TV revenue, you get to keep your same stuff, I think that would be more in line for it. Smaller clubs, yeah, he corrected himself there. Remy confirms, yeah, I'm from Knoxville. Rick says, which is your favorite Venezuelan player? I'm probably forgetting somebody, but the first one that comes to my mind, just because he was here at Nashville SC in the early days, is Jonder Cadiz. So I'll say Jonder Cadiz by default, just because he might be, pretty sure he's the only Venezuelan player that's ever played for Nashville SC. So I'll go Cadiz by default. I do think if COVID didn't hit, if he hadn't had, some health issues that came from COVID, he could have been something for us here. He had some bright spots, and he's looked pretty good in his post-Nashville SC career at times. So missed opportunity there, I would say. Rick says, I love your league. For us in South America now is better than Mexican league. Appreciate that. Yeah, I do think, it's getting there. You still see players every once in a while will jump down there. They do still seem to have a little bit more money to invest. They do still have a little bit more. But I do think, just from what I've watched Liga MX from time to time, I do think you're starting to see the quality of play in MLS creep up to being as good, if not better. So, appreciate that. It's a good compliment. Says, I think MLS is not retirement league. From there is going to players to Europe, Europeans going to MLS. Even the African market is watching more there. Yeah, I think we have kind of moved away from that. You don't see, the older players that are coming over here, they're still playing at a pretty high level. Like, all the guys down in Inter Miami, obviously, is a big example of that. We'll see what happens with Zaha. I don't know what's going to happen with that. That just seems like a crapshoot. Emil Forsberg, who just came over from Europe, relatively still somewhat in his latter part of his prime, so I do think we're moving away from that, but I don't think, if a major star decides they want to come play here, if Luka Modric at like 45 is like, I'll come play in MLS, somebody's going to give him a chance. Richard back in. Pro reg supporters never talked that the leagues would also have to get rid of territory rights for teams to be considered an open system. That would never happen. Yeah, there's so much just with the old rules and like outdated stuff that MLS would have to just do away with because, discovery rights, homegrown rights, territory rights, so much stuff that would have to change. It's just too tight of a web to weave for it ever to really happen. As a Red Bulls fan, are you ready for the 0-0 snooze fest tomorrow? I predicted earlier in the stream, you might not have jumped in yet. I think it's going to be 2-0 to y'all. I think, with us still kind of in the early stages of developing our new system, our new, way of playing, the way you guys press and cause chaos, the talented players you have in Forsberg and Moting, I think there's goals in there for you guys. I'm saying 2-0 Red Bull New York, but we've seen a lot, like as Castle Coyote said earlier, 4 draws, 2 losses in the history of this matchup. So very likely could be 0-0, and the odds would say it's going to be 0-0. I mean, 0-0 is the most common result between the two teams. So yeah, we might be looking at 0-0 tomorrow. I predicted 2-0 just because I think, we're not going to have the full-on just back down the hatches, hold on for dear life that we had under the Gary Smith. We will, I think, try to be aggressive. I think we're going to try to continue to progress in this new, more possession-based style of play that BJ Callahan is trying to implement. And I think, like I said earlier, I think New York Red Bulls is a bad matchup for that. When you're trying to figure out how to get on the same page, how to keep possession, how to, pass the ball, when you got potentially a 18, 19-year-old center mid making his second ever MLS start, that seems chaotic to me. That just worries me that we're going to be a little bit of a mess tomorrow with the implementation of the system and Red Bulls just kind of swarming us a little bit. Rick says, wish you the best from Venezuela. Wish your scouts search more talent here, whereas common cheap investment. Wolkerman Cremona of New York Red Bull is a big example. There you go. Somebody will probably see some tomorrow. It's a great one. Yeah, that was that was the big thing Atlanta did. They went down into the countries like that, the kind of surrounding, not the big ones you're familiar with, like Argentina and Brazil, the ones that, love soccer, develop players the same way, Nashville SC has seemed to be more targeting the Scandinavian market, obviously. Yeah, that's something Mike Jacobs seems to have a feel for that market, but that's been a common thing for other teams around the league to kind of look in those countries. Once again, I'm predicting 0-0 or 1-0 win for either team. Yeah, it's gonna be good. I'm not like one of those games where I'm not gonna be bummed whatever the result is, unless we get just thrashed. If we lose like 6-0, I'll be like, uh-oh, something's gone wrong. But it's kind of one where I'm going in with the expectation it's going to be a very difficult game for us. So if we can just kind of hold the fort, I'll feel pretty good about it. Like I'll weirdly, like second week in a row, I'll be like, everybody will be like, oh my God, if we go 0-0 again, there's going to be a section of the fan base that's just going to riot and be like, it's the same old crap, 0-0 again. And I'm just going to be over here and be like, I'm looking at two different kinds of 0-0s, the Gary Smith 0-0s and the BJ Callahan 0-0s, and I'll be happy. Are you planning to go to any away games this season? So, don't really often talk about like my life outside of stuff that I put on the channel, but I did just this week start a new full-time job. So, big major life change. It's kind of an off the channel type thing. So, that's kind of going to be what determines a lot of what travel and non-Nashville based stuff looks like over the next year. I'm kind of in that mode now where I just started the job, so I'm getting my feet under me. I got to kind of get a feel for what, exactly time off, pay, budget, stuff like that. It'll be about a month, 2 months before I kind of have more of a feel for what's going to be allowable in terms of how much money am I making? How much, freedom do I have to take time off and go do things like that? Always definitely want to go to do an away game. I've been, wanting to do it every season, but it's been one thing or another. My previous job had a lot of commitments on Saturdays work-wise, so traveling to games on a Saturday was always going to be a challenge then. This new job, no weekends. I don't have to work Saturdays and Sundays anymore. So there's a lot more openings for, travel on the weekends for these type of games. Got to see what the money stuff looks like first. Got to get my money right before I start making plans like that. But it's definitely something I'm always keeping an eye on, always something I'm thinking about. I mean, obviously, easy ones that I'd probably knock off first would be just the simple ones from us, like Atlanta, Cincinnati, both relatively quick trips from here in Nashville. But, hopefully, as I get a little more money in my pocket, as, get a little bit more growth in this new role, branch out, go to Toronto, go out to San Diego, go to St. Louis is one I definitely would love to go to. St. Louis is pretty high on the list on places I'd like to check out. So it's definitely something that I want to do. I'm kind of in the learning phase of this new job. I just started figuring out, can I do it? So stay tuned more from that. One thing I'm really hopeful for this season, Nashville SC being back in the U.S. Open Cup. One of the away days I've got to do with Nashville SC previously was we went up to Louisville to play Louisville City in an Open Cup match a few years back. So I'd love it if we got drawn. I think we're going to host at least the first game we'll play in the Open Cup, but I'd love it if like we second round get to go to some unique place like I don't know. But like also U.S. Open Cup matches are cheaper than MLS matches, the tickets, so a little bit easier to manage on that side too. Catzel Coyote says, I think 0-0 tomorrow will be more of a 0.1 rather than 2 lost, at least with our current injury list too. Completely agree. Rick says, do you travel by yourself or you travel with Nashville fandom? Depends. The Louisville trip, they did like a big group trip up there, but like me and a buddy drove up there separately, but then we kind of met up with the fan group up there. For the closer games, there's always like a ticket allotment they give for our away fans. It depends on how many actually turn out. Like Atlanta, there's always like a big group that goes to Atlanta. There's always a big group that goes to Cincinnati. I would definitely jump on that if I could. I'm a member of the Assembly, one of our supporters group here, and they always have a allotment of away tickets. They sometimes have done buses. They sometimes, arranged get-togethers, night before parties on the road, stuff like that. So if I did travel on one of these games, I would 100% be jumping in and being a part of that stuff. Good luck with the new job. Thanks, Richard. I'm pretty excited about it. It's, like I said, I don't reveal too much about what goes on behind the scenes with the real life stuff, but I'm pretty excited about it. I think it's going to be a good change, a pace, a good fit. Rick says, how much is a shirt of Nashville? Sadly, much like the rest of the soccer world, especially like, the bigger leagues and the ones that have Adidas and Nike, our shirt prices have gotten ridiculous. I believe an authentic jersey without a player's name on it, the new jerseys, Heart of Nashville, I believe is like $150 or $160. And then if you get a player name on it, you're almost getting up to $200. I have seen a lot of people posting lately. If you like the Man in Black kit, if you look that up, our black alternate jersey that we used for the last 2 seasons, but that is now retired, a jersey we're no longer be using this season, it's now on sale. You can get the authentic for like $40 and you can get the replica for $20. And I think it's still the best jersey we've ever had. So if you want a Nashville SC jersey, that's the best one we've had, and you can get it for pretty cheap right now. Question is Gaston Brugman out for tomorrow? He's been upgraded from out last week to questionable. The players that were questionable last week didn't play, so I don't know, if you can read anything to that. I would guess he's probably not going to play, but you never know. He has been upgraded to questionable. He has been back in training, so he's got a chance, but we'll see. Yeah, wow. Very expensive. Yes, even more than the original jersey European teams. Yeah, that is kind of crazy, but that's a Fanatics Adidas thing more than a Nashville SC thing, I think. Although I'm sure they get a cut of it, so I'm sure they're not too disappointed by those prices. But yeah, DH Gate. I'll just say that. I think we kind of hit everything. We talked a lot about the game. Got some good interaction with the chat there. A lot of questions came in kind of right there, but I think I've kind of hit everything I wanted to talk about. Let me think really quickly. Anything we did not cover? Any Man U talk? The less said about Manchester United. I mean, this is just the worst season, and you're just waiting for it to be over because, our new manager Ruben Amorim is basically saying in his press conference, he's basically like, we just have to survive this season, get to the off season, let's see if we can reset and get some new things going. So yeah, it's just the one thing they have to hope for, and this is not possible. If they could somehow win the Europa League and sneak in the back door to get into Champions League next year, that would be huge in terms of financial stuff that would allow them to do more moves in the summer. But I mean, you just watch them and you're like, I don't know how they beat anybody. Like Ipswich, that game the other day, I don't know how we won that game. I don't know how. If we didn't have, I think it was Ian Wright said this, and he's spot on. If we did not have Bruno Fernandes, we would be relegated. Luckily, we don't have to worry about that in MLS. Rick's out. He says, going to work, wishes you more. You have good vibes. Appreciate it, Rick. Subscribe to the channel, turn the bell on for notifications. We do this. Try to do this every Friday during MLS season so I can talk a little Nashville SC and pop up and do some other stuff here and there. But videos all the time. Anytime I think of anything worth blogging, I put up a video for it. We have game day vlogs, all that kind of stuff. And he says, greetings from Venezuela. Great to have a viewer from outside the country. Love to see the good word of Nashville SC being spread around. We've got Canada in the chat. We've got Venezuela in the chat. It's great. I'm enjoying it. I love doing this stuff. It's been fun. I think we're going to wrap this one up for this week. Be back next week. If everything goes according to plan, I'm going to try to keep going with these Friday night live streams the night before to preview the matchup. Next week, we will be back home. It's March the 8th. Nashville SC plays host to, I know it's the Barbie game. That is the theme for the game. That is the official Nashville SC theme night for that game is going to be Barbie night. Who do we play? We play Portland. Portland, who got shellacked by Vancouver in the opening game of the season. Good time to be catching Portland, it looks like right now. So we'll see them in a couple weeks, but we'll see Nashville SC versus Red Bull New York tomorrow. I'm going to try to find a cool watch party. Like Nashville SC isn't doing a specific one tomorrow, but they listed a whole huge list of pub partners from all around the Middle Tennessee area. They're going to be showing the game. So they try to pop out and watch one of those. Like I said, I'm in bachelor mode this week. I'm just caring for myself. I'm the only me around. Not a drinker, so I won't be drinking, but maybe go get a pizza or a burger somewhere and watch the game. Sounds like a great time. Thanks everybody that was jumping in the chat and bringing some heat there. It's always fun when we have interaction and can talk with each other in these chats. If you're watching, just watch along and not chatting, or if you're watching a replay, I appreciate you as well. Like I said earlier with Rick and everybody else, if you're not already, please subscribe to the channel and turn the bell on for notifications. We love having everybody here to be a part of this fun little adventure that we're doing here on the channel. Wrapping up for tonight. We'll be back soon. Before you know it, enjoy your life. Enjoy your bagels.